What's up guys? Welcome to AnimeKouhai. If you'd like to help me out, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.
In that case, allow me to assist you a bit.
Carrera believed she heard a voice, and the next thing she knew, something that had been bugging her in the back of her mind took shape. She focused on it now since it represented her wish and resolve. Up until this point, all she had inside of her was pure power, which she could manage and summon as needed. But now was the time to claim that power as her own, and let it go. But every ultimate power requires a moniker.
My power. I'll give you a name now. In order to accomplish the duty Sir Rimuru assigned to me, you will become my skill and further release your power. Your name is Ultimate Skill Abaddon, Lord of Destruction.
Abaddon, the one who destroys, and the king of the abyss. No power could have been more fitting for the Menace Lord. Finally, she had it. The absolute, indisputable power to ruin everything. The ultimate skill Abaddon, Lord of Destruction. It represented everything Carrera wished for. A terrifying power that, when unleashed, would undoubtedly destroy its opponents. Carrera had to encounter a truly formidable enemy before she could crave power for the first time, and that encounter was about to end. Kondou felt that this was not amusing. Carrera had awakened to her ultimate power right in front of his eyes, just as he was ready to finish her out. He wished he could urge her to stop with the nonsense, but it was too late. Carrera had been the target of several of his attempts to strike her fatally, but each time she was knocked down, she always sprang back up. He cut through her defenses with a removal bullet and then used a necrosis bullet to stop the magical flow inside of her. The force of the eraser bullet ability then took center stage after she had sustained enough damage. It ought to have settled long ago. Despite his best efforts, Kondou was unable to beat Carrera, and as a result, her strength was now awakened. He was well aware that he had made a terrible mistake.
Well, that's great. If only I still had judgment bullets available.
The idea might have occurred to Kondou due of his developing nervousness. One judgment bullet every day, the strongest strike he could manage, was a true joker card that he could only summon. However, he recently employed one to force Veldora to the ground. It was the height of stupidity, and highly uncharacteristic of Kondou, to beg for something he didn't have in a life or death situation. This terrible adversary, who had recently attained an unidentified power, was in front of him. He was in a gloomy mood just thinking about it. He could still gather himself, though. He was required to continue the combat while wearing his ceremonial attire, remaining unflinching in his resolve. But as he started performing that task, he spoke to Carrera and for the first time expressed his own sentiments.
You are all being so unfair.
The vulnerability of humans was mocked, but that was not unexpected. The difference in species hierarchy between them was too big to be bridged. Kondou himself couldn't help but complain about it. Carrera nodded in satisfaction as she heard this.
Of course, it is. After all, we are the most powerful species. But don't you think you're also being a little unfair?
In her own way, Carrera considered it to be the highest compliment she could offer. With the utmost respect, she was prepared to tackle him head-on because she had already accepted him as being on par with her. She took a battle stance, raised her guard, and pointed her sword at him. Both of her hands experienced the activation of Abaddon, Lord of Destruction, with a powerful force coursing through them. As a massive amount of magicules turned into energy, the area between her and Kondou became filled with black and white light, with the shockwaves alone capable of blowing them away. Carrera was able to manage everything, with just her conscious attention.
Let me show you everything.
I'd like it if you wouldn't, you know.
Hee. Don't be such an obstructionist. You have earned my respect, and I will demonstrate my greatest magic for you.
Kondou felt uneasy about this. However, Carrera was a demon who gave little thought to other people's sentiments. Despite the fact that Carrera was only having a good time at the time, that made Leon, the Demon Lord, miserable as well. It was unpleasant to consider, but from Kondou's perspective, Leon had it simple. When Carrera was being serious, he didn't have to deal with her. Kondou did. Carrera now had the most magicules of the 4 Devil Lords, including Diablo. Before Abaddon, she hadn't been able to totally control it, but now she was able to do so. In actuality, Carrera's ability to manipulate magic was comparable to Velgrin's.
Allow me to grant you damnation. Disappear before me. Abyss annihilation.
Even gravity collapse, the best and most potent assault magic, could not compare to this ultimate magic, which represented Carrera's ideals in action. It functioned by introducing material from the darkest depths of hellish abysses into a gravitational force field that had collapsed, creating an unimaginable flood of intense energy. It goes without saying that it was quite challenging to even direct this energy at something, much less manage it. Carrera didn't even hesitate to use it despite the fact that it wasn't intended to be used when standing on a planetary surface. In fact, one mistake in control might wipe out an entire planet. This was the first time she had attempted it in the physical world because she had never been able to pull it off during her practice sessions in the underworld. Even though it had never before succeeded, she didn't think twice. The other demonesses would have stopped her at all costs if they had been present, but Carrera wasn't about to be restrained at this time. Agera was present, but it would have been unreasonable to ask Carrera to stop right then. Agera, not Kondou, was arguably the one in the arena who was the most terrified because he understood just how powerful this magic was. As soon as Carrera started to use the skill, Kondou saw the threat and sent in Sandalphon before Carrera made her final declaration. Kondou was skilled at making snap judgments, but this time he had messed with the incorrect adversary. Abyss Annihilation was a massive spell with an equally massive range that could only be cast utilizing Carrera's outrageous magic force. It was impossible to predict the extent of the devastation this would inflict if this weren't another dimension. Kondou wondered if it could potentially ruin this entire dimension. If so, anything in the line of fire would be destroyed if it was pointed directly at him, as it was right now. Kondou came to that decision. And if this dimension were to vanish, Emperor Rudra might even suffer. Yes, his defenses were adequate, but this was a totally unexpected strike. That wasn't all, though. Kondou now realized a fact that was even more unsettling. Carrera's stance suggested that even this cruel magic was only a ruse. She would then likely strike him with her genuine ace in the hole, a downward slash from her demon blade, if he managed to survive this. If such were the case, no defense existed. The only means of surviving was to bravely make every sacrifice and outslash the adversary. Kondou decided accordingly. He sheathed his cherished sword and waited for the moment. He then moved as soon as Carrera began to use her powers. He drew his blade, risking everything.
Multi-layered, Blossom Flash.
He immediately mimicked the method Hakuro had demonstrated for him. It had the power of a judgment bullet, which he was only permitted to use once every day, but he had to go beyond that limit here, or else only destruction awaited. He took a chance on himself since he was certain he could succeed. In the arena, the power of the soul was clearly seen. Did that belong to Carrera or Kondou? Although that would always remain a mystery, one thing was undeniable. Both sides were giving it their all. Kondou's blade cut through the rush of frantic energy unleashed by Abyss Annihilation. Even though it caused Carrera's eyes to expand, she was grinning. His body was in excruciating anguish. Even this ceremonial cloak of God class, which was the finest defense he could hope for, was powerless against the force of devastation. He didn't allow this to intimidate him though. With unshakable faith, he targeted Carrera's head and used the 8 blossom slashes that earned Hakuro's technique its name. Carrera rose above him.
Nice effort. I'll now demonstrate my best technique for you, having assimilated Agera's knowledge.
It was spoken as well as unspoken. Carrera had sent Kondou 100 sword flashes in a single instant, each faster than he could react. This was how she had expressed her will. This was the maneuver Crestwater 100 Flower Bloom, and its intolerable brutality immediately broke Kondou's sword. Immediately after that, Carrera's final strike made a diagonal slash through his body. Kondou could feel his entire body losing strength. Knowing that he had already gone beyond his breaking point, he closed his eyes and collapsed to the ground. His passing was imminent.
How inadequate.
As he was thinking this, he laughed at himself. In the end, he was powerless to protect his country or honor his vow to Rudra.
Don't be my enemy, Tatsuya.
I wasn't even able to keep my word to you.
The thought of the broken promise made Kondou's heart ache so much that he felt like he would burst.
Tatsuya, may I ask you for a favor?
Yes, anything. As a friend, I'll help however I can.
Right? I wanted to repay the kindness. I wanted to express my gratitude to Rudra for her friendship and for providing me with a cause to survive in this world. But even so, that was an incredibly harsh request.
I begged Damrata for a favor a long time ago. I told him I wanted him to intervene if I ever let go of my principles. But I've lived far too long, and Damrata is far too nice a guy to take my life with his own hands. I sincerely regret requesting such a nasty favor from him.
So,
I have faith that you can approach it calmly, Tatsuya. I'm sure you'll be able to kill me. So kindly interfere with Damrata's efforts and use your own hands to stop me.
He was unwilling to. As much as anybody else, he wanted Rudra to live. He was a sensible, intelligent man who always had his sights set on the goal. For Kondou, he was like an idol, someone he could never match but constantly try to resemble. After failing to defend his homeland, Kondou became dejected and threatened to turn the blade on himself. He was the one who stopped him. The great hero, Emperor Rudra. He nevertheless nodded because he was aware of Rudra's pain. His body, his brilliant soul, had long since reached its breaking point. In an effort to gain control of his specific skill, Michael, Lord of Justice, he had repeatedly assumed other bodies. Kondou believed he knew that better than anyone else, probably even more so than Velgrund, thanks to Decipherer, his own unique skill. Due to her blindness from her love for Rudra, Velgrund would probably be enraged if she realized the favors he requested from Damrata and Kondou. It was almost expected that Rudra would beg Kondou for this favor. He had given his emperor a nod, thus he was obligated to uphold his word. After all, that was what making a pledge entailed. However, that moment was far off. Still conscious and fully functional, Rudra was in good health. Was that indeed the case, or? Looking back, he could have detected a few abnormalities, such as the sporadically cruel decisions he made and the cold gaze he periodically showed. The only Rudra Kondou was aware of, yet he could see how it must have tortured Damrata. He reasoned that if Rudra was still alive, why would Damrata be acting so upset about it? It was a somewhat foolish thought to have in retrospect.
When did it start?
When did Damrata start making serious moves toward this goal?
Have I missed anything crucial, perhaps?
As instructed, he had interfered with Damrata, but perhaps that was a grave error. Rudra was positively radiant when they first met, but Kondou had failed to notice his transformation. Kondou felt the darkness in his heart lift as soon as he understood this, as if the chains had been freed.
Yes. I suppose that I was once also influenced by Michael.
How pitiful, he thought. And it was. He ought to have taken the initiative and begun to act when Damrata was going to murder Rudra rather than interfering. Then, maybe, he could have stopped Rudra.
What an oversight.
Now, there was no going back on it. Kondou had no idea why he had been released from Michael's grip, but he couldn't move a finger at this time. The only thing left to do was to wait for his body to decay away.
My lord, I am nothing. I was unable to experience your agony alongside you or to take any action to lessen it. Even that promise to set you free.
He was supposed to stop Rudra, but that was impossible at this point. He would regrettably pass away.
Hey, why are you sleeping there? Let's keep going.
He was roused from sleep when he heard a voice speaking to him. He opened his eyes a little and saw his adversary, the person who had battled him to the death, pouting and staring at him. She was a demon, stunningly gorgeous, with gleaming blonde hair and a brilliant smile.
Don't act absurdly. I'm almost dead already. I couldn't possibly fight.
Huh? But we still aren't settled on this. That is not acceptable.
That's it for this video, guys. Thank you for always watching my videos and supporting my channel. A big thanks to the AnimeKouhai patrons who made this video possible. Vethelny, Linnell Scarlett, Khalid, Christian Deshazer, Kel Robs, Divine C. Harris, Aaron Alarcon, DeAndre Nance, Monty Boy 98, D-Man, Jared Bressler, Chad Vota, Chris Guzman. Thank you so much for helping out. I'll see you guys in the next video.